Night in East Lansing, Jim Comparoni, SpartanMag.com. Maggers, let me know if the microphone's any better this time. I tested it offline, and it seemed to work okay. I'll wait for people to chime in. My name is Jim Comparoni, publisher of SpartanMag.com. And every week or so, we do this little thing called Spartan Mag Live. Our Michigan State fans post questions over at SpartanMag.com, and we field those questions here. I'm waiting to hear whether or not the microphone is working. This is a false start. Much better. Thanks a lot, Brian. Want to make sure we get that from a couple of the people. All right, it's sounding better. Not sure what happened last time, but appreciate the feedback we got from everybody. To start over again, my name is Jim Comparoni, publisher SpartanMag.com. If you are not familiar with the madness that we have at SpartanMag.com, go over there and check it out. You might make some friends, you might make some enemies. Either way, it'll be a lot of fun. SpartanMag.com is the Michigan State website for Rivals.com. Been around since, 1996, something like that. I lose count. What we do here with Spartan Mag Live is we field some questions, both live and mailbag form. Questions posed and posted over at the Underground Bunker message board at SpartanMag.com, and that message board is the church of what's happening now in Michigan State sports, and that's where that's where the serious Michigan State fans get together and discuss things. A lot of good analysts over there. I want to give a shout out to Paul Konodike, doing a great job this week. Corey Robinson, great job covering recruiting. Corey Robinson doing a great job in a lot of different realms. People, you guys have heard today, he works over at Sparrow Hospital. He's one of the frontliners. He works in the field of medical technology, and that's something he and I did a recruiting rap podcast last night, and I was going to ask him, before we went on the air, I asked him how he was doing and those type of things. He's had a few days off this week, and he's been filling it with a lot of great recruiting coverage. And I was going to ask him if it would be okay to talk about that publicly. I forgot to ask him before we went on the air. Went ahead, did a recruiting rap podcast, and then today he retweeted a thank you to Mel Tucker, Michigan State football coach Mel Tucker, for the things that Mel Tucker did in terms of treating workers over at Sparrow Hospital to dinner, to carry out dinner over there 2 days ago. Corey was among the recipients of those. So Corey Robinson tweeting out thank you to Mel Tucker for that on behalf of a lot of his coworkers. So Corey went public with that. So at this time, I want to say thank you, and I'm sure a lot of the other people watching right now thank Corey Robinson too for the things he's doing with a lot of plates spinning and some very important work, and also some entertaining, informative work over at SpartanMag.com. How about Corey Robinson? Great Spartan, great American. Anyway, we've got some questions. We will get to them. I'm going to try to go less than an hour tonight. Last time I went 2.5 hours. I don't know what the heck was going on. You know how I am. I'll just start talking too much. Bird walking, I think, is the way one person described it over at the Underground Bunker. I'm going to try to keep this one shorter. Last time, I think I fielded 15, 16 questions on the mailbag and then another however many in the chat area. Going to try to limit it to about 9 or 10 questions from the mailbag. That means there are some leftover questions over at the Underground Bunker message board. Maybe I will get to those again, maybe in a couple days. Maybe I'll do that Sunday night. Recording this one on Friday. Maybe we will have more of these shorter. That's one of the I forgot what I was going to say, man. I was reading some questions there, and I flat out forgot what I was going to say. But anyway, that was one of the requests that we received over at the Underground Bunker message board, that some of you want these to be shorter, but more frequently. So we're going to do that. I'll tackle the first question here in a moment. Then I'll pause and send out a tweet to let people know that this madness is going on. Once again, appreciate everybody tuning in, checking us out, and your support of SpartanMag.com and Michigan State sports, and your support for each other. Doing it via social distancing, which has been apparently it seems to be a success. I'm not an expert on those things. I'm not an expert on anything, but I'm hearing that things are doing better in Ohio. So those of you that are watching in Ohio, keep doing what you're doing. Those of you watching in Michigan, I want to say keep taking care of each other, but that's not what you're supposed to do. A good thing, and you can't take care of each other with the social distancing, right? But what I've noticed is, and you may have noticed this too, old friends, chat groups. I've been chatting via the phone with old friends in the last couple of weeks, more so than any time since maybe I've had my phone. And earlier this week, MLB Network showed the 68 World Series, and more importantly, the 1984 World Series. And I had high school friends and college friends, two different texts, and some siblings too, talking about the good old days watching those things because we can't get out and do a lot of things these days, right? But via text, I'm noticing more time, at least me, more time for some old friends. Hopefully you are too. Question number one. We'll get to that in a second, but first of all, some news. I like to hit some news subjects first. Corey Robinson with a great article today about recruiting from California. Recruit Peter Costelli. He's a four-star recruit, people. Legit four-star recruit, 6'3", 192, from Mission Viejo, California. He took a virtual, unofficial visit to Michigan State today, which means he had FaceTime with Mel Tucker, offensive coordinator Jay Johnson, and Novak, the new strength coach, and also some of the on-campus recruiting staff. And they FaceTime and talk to recruits all the time. But in this situation, it was a concerted effort, a group effort, made it more of a virtual visit. And he liked it, and his mother loved it. And Corey wrote about that over at SpartanMag.com today. And Corey thinks Michigan State's going to have a really good chance to get an official visit from him whenever travel restrictions let up. Other schools involved include Nebraska, Northwestern, Utah, Arkansas, Louisville. You watch this guy's film, and I'm sure a lot of you guys watched it after reading Corey's article, and making all the throws on time, zip, trajectory, touch, feet, athletic feet, can move it out. Four-star for a reason. I'd go as far as to say plus athleticism when you factor in the acceleration, ability to get out of trouble. Also, along with that athleticism, quick feet in the pocket, footwork to get his feet set, which helps the ball come out on time better. You could tell he's been well coached on his footwork and has drilled it. That's an exciting one. And we talked last week about some of the other guys from California, including Beavers and some others. Been a long time since Michigan State had somebody of that ranking in the state of California. They were in on him when they were at Colorado. And just, a new age of Michigan State football recruiting, getting in on a four-star out of California. Of course, Lewerke was a four-star out of Arizona. So along the same lines, but Mel Tucker looking to ring the bell in a different way. Other news, Braden Burke today, you may have read that article all over the internet, but our article on SpartanMag.com today showing that Tom Izzo gave Braden Burke his blessing to enter the transfer portal. You guys know that the transfer portal is not Izzo's favorite thing, but in this case, he told me that he spoke with Braden Burke last night and encouraged Braden Burke, advised Braden Burke, put your name in the portal, see if there's any takers, see if there's any action there. Because like I mentioned in my article today, Braden Burke can play. This guy had, 9 rebounds against Kansas State when he was a freshman at Robert Morris. Started 7 games for Robert Morris. Robert Morris, a pretty good low major program, been in the NCAA tournament a few times. And Braden Burke is better now. He's been hitting the weights. He's been working on his back to the basket moves. Mechanics are good. Not the quickest guy, but he's 7 feet. Got some width, got some strength. Great teammate. He could help a mid-major out there. He can help a mid-major. And, this year, as you know, he was behind Xavier Tillman, Marcus Bingham, Thomas Kithier, Julius Marble, and Malik Hall. So there was just no playing time for him. Even in garbage time situations, they wanted to get Marble out there and get Bingham as many minutes as possible. So Braden Burke, excellent scout team player, contributed to this year's Big Ten championship team as a scout team player. Has one more year to go. Izzo encouraged him to go take a look. So that was the news today. Let's take a look at the mailbag. First question is a basketball question. At SpartanMag.com. It's always football season at SpartanMag.com. You guys know that. And one of the things that's not different at this time of year, spring football, we are actually getting more spring football interviews with coaches this spring than we did last spring or the spring before. I still have more quotes saved up. Need to do more stories. Got more in the hopper to come. We've had more things to write about. With the coaches, it's different levels of experience with their own players. For instance, when we talked to Chris Kapilovic, the offensive line coach, he had seen Michigan State's offensive linemen in several workouts, and watch their film and everything. Whereas yesterday we spoke with Ross Ells, the linebackers coach, and he only has 2 returning linebackers and a couple of the guys that played a little bit. And by the time he was hired and joined the staff and got out here, he only saw maybe 1 strength and conditioning workout. So he doesn't know as much about his players and doesn't have as many of them, and certainly does not have game film on them in comparison to Chris Kapilovic. So although football's been shut down for 3 weeks or however long it's been, they have different levels of information on their own pools of talent there at Michigan State. But each article for now we're learning different things every week, and I've found them interesting. You know, last year we weren't getting a chance to interview many coaches, and then, of course, we're not allowed to watch much practice. Michigan State went all the way to the Final Four, so that went through 2/3 of spring football. So it's not like we in the media were able to watch a whole lot. The difference is last year we were able to watch the green-white game at the end, which I watch closely. I know all of you do too. You get it on the Big Ten Network. You can rewatch it. And when it comes to third stringers and guys that have redshirted, I use that green-white game as a touchstone of information for many months to come. We won't have that this year, regrettably. But as of right now, there's not a big difference in terms of how much spring football information we get. Of course, all the players are home right now working on things. For us in the public and in the media, that's not much different than them actually practicing in East Lansing, because if they were practicing in East Lansing last year, they weren't giving us any information anyway. So we have some catching up to do there, but some of that football still has a shelf life. Some of those articles have been free articles. If you're not a subscriber to SpartanMag.com, you can go check out, find some free ones. I think the one I did yesterday on Ross Ells about linebackers, that's a free article. At the bottom of the article, there's a list of the spring football stories that we've written so far. If you're not a subscriber to this website, this YouTube website, go ahead and do that. Give us a thumbs up also. That helps get the word out a little bit more, gets it into the algorithm so more people can view this, and it makes it better to get the word out about our website. So maybe we get more subscribers, and then we can pay Corey Robinson more. All right, Corey? He's doing a great job. Question number 1. It's a basketball question from Alex in Los Angeles. He says, what are you hearing about Kareem Mane and Xavier Tillman? That question was from a couple of days ago. We updated that a little bit in the article today about Braden and Burke. You know, Tillman, as many of you know, put his name into the NBA draft. He's testing the waters. He's getting information from NBA scouts. Xavier Tillman and his mother are trusting Tom Izzo to look into it and talk to GMs in the NBA, try to gauge where Xavier Tillman would be drafted. And it's a tricky one because, you know, the mock drafts, which don't involve NBA GMs, you know, they've got Tillman late first round, maybe mid-second round. So the way Izzo talks about it, there's a certain level that if they feel really good, that there's like an 80% chance that he'll be a first rounder. That's my term. I'm not quoting them. That's not what they said. But they've got a figure in mind of where they want Xavier Tillman to be projected before they go ahead and make that decision. I got to say that when he announced he was going pro, that wasn't a surprise. And I kind of thought it was a foregone conclusion that Xavier Tillman was going to end up in the NBA. You know, as you know, he's got a newborn. He has two children, a wife, and he had a good season. And he's borderline first round. I thought that this would be his time to go. But talking with some Michigan State basketball coaches, they are not treating it as a foregone conclusion that he will be gone. They are not planning for the future, assuming that he won't be a part of it. They're going to wait and see. They think there's a chance he'll come back. We all remember that Draymond Green went to the NBA as a second rounder, and he's done great things. Xavier Tillman, I'd love to see him come back because he's an interesting person. He's a great interview, an entertaining player, a good guy. But I'm not afraid to say I want what's best for him. As a reporter, we're not supposed to root for people, but I do. I root for people all the time. Can't help it. If you've known a guy like Xavier Tillman since he was 17 years old, you can't help but be a fan of him, no matter what jersey he's wearing. So, and that goes for some guys that have played basketball for Michigan too. And here I am on a bird walk going off on a tangent. I'll get off that one. But anyway, Tillman, they're going to wait and see. In terms of Kareem Mane, that's a guy, you know, that's the point guard out of Montreal, about 6'4", a five-star guy, Canadian kid, 19 years old, grade 13 in Canada. So he is eligible to join the NBA draft this year. So he and his people are still thinking about the NBA draft, trying to figure out where he would be selected in the NBA draft. Secondly, as many of you know, he has taken official visits to Maryland and Marquette. He was planning to visit Michigan State around this time, unable to do it for obvious reasons. I thought that meant that Michigan State was going to have a terrible chance to get him. I'm being distracted by some of the messages because they are important messages. But I thought that Michigan State would have a terrible shot at getting him without an official visit. That's the way it's always been, right? But this year, the spring of 2020, everything is different. And we just saw the Carleek kid from Radford agree to transfer to Louisville and never took a visit to Louisville. So that's the way that is. You might see some football recruits start to commit to places without taking visits. So in the year 2020, that might become a little bit more normal. Would he commit to a Michigan State having not visited? Maybe if he had not visited anywhere else, but he has visited Marquette and Maryland. You got to believe that's got to put Michigan State at a major disadvantage. But Michigan State is still in there going after him. They like him, and that's one guy they want to add if possible. Now, in terms of joining the NBA, he's got to make that decision by June 15th. So Michigan State's not in an ideal situation, but I find it interesting that they're trying to work it. They're not giving up. All right, I'm going to go ahead and tweet and let people know that this nonsense is going on. Let me see here, make sure that dead air, nothing like dead air. Apologize for that. I've had this thing ready to go. There we go, got it right now. Question number 2, Dan from Royal Oak, Michigan. What is your assessment of the Davion Prim commitment as a prospect? How does he fit into how Michigan State wants to run the offense? Davion Prim commitment a couple of days ago from Oak Park. What is he, about 6 feet, 190? Many of you have seen his film. Good acceleration, not necessarily a track star speed burner, but I've seen juniors add speed after the age of 17. Wouldn't surprise me if he adds to that speed. And speed's not bad. I like his ability to make one cut and go, the little sidestep. And I suspect that's what put Michigan State over the top to go ahead and offer him a scholarship. I think he's a good running back. Michigan State wants to recruit 2 running backs. They want to sign 2 this year. So Michigan State needed to break the ice, get a commitment. You know, Michigan State has not had a lot of people visit since Tucker was hired. They like him. They like his film. Checks out in all regards. Went ahead, got the class started. I understand why they took him. Gets the class going. Michigan State is not poor on running backs that are already on campus or already on the roster. So a good way to just break the seal, get a commitment from a kid from Oak Park. Oak Park, excellent talent these days in football, including Rayshawn Benny, the offensive lineman. Michigan State interested in him, number 5 player in the state. So all the way around, a good way to get it going. And I'll get to some questions later about other running backs that they're looking at, because there's a follow-up question on here somewhere. But a good prospect. I'm not an expert when it comes to evaluating talent, although I act like I am sometimes. I look at film and I give you my opinion, and some people value it, and some people just categorize it whatever, that's fine. Running back is the position that over the years, I have struggled at the most in terms of getting an accurate assessment of what they're going to become in college. Because to me, running backs, man, a lot of them look good, don't they? They all look good. And you're looking at the speed. It's hard. You're trying to get a read on vision and durability and ability to break tackles and the elusiveness. I didn't know Jeremy Langford was going to do that. There's a lot of examples, but that's a position that, for some reason, I don't listen to myself a whole lot on those. You know who I loved was Gerald Owens. Ended up being a defensive lineman at Michigan State. I mean, you go back and look at his junior film as a running back, but back then he was like 260, and he had moves like Rerun. Do you remember Rerun on What's Happening? I mean, he was all over the place and making people miss, and enough quickness and size. All that I knew was that was a kid from New Jersey that was uncommon film. Like, I haven't seen a guy do that, and I wasn't exactly sure what that meant. The thing is, Gerald Owens, a lot like Lawrence Thomas, after the age of 17, kept growing and growing and putting on more and more weight naturally. Lawrence Thomas once upon a time was a 4-star, 4.5-star, maybe 5-star linebacker. But then he naturally grew to 250, 260, 280, 290, became a defensive lineman at Michigan State, and a good one. But Lawrence Thomas, when he was in the All-American Bowl, by that time he was 265 and too big for linebacker, and he didn't have good speed for that position because he outgrew the position, and it hurt his ranking a little bit. But he had the ability to move to defensive end, then defensive tackle. Gerald Owens kept putting on weight, got over 300, became a serviceable defensive tackle as a senior. And interestingly, we interviewed him before senior day, not this year, but last year, and he was kind of sporting the Merrill Stubing. You remember, Merrill Stubing from The Love Boat? You know what I'm talking about. I'm a little bit follically challenged my darn self, so I can't really speak about it all that much. But Gerald Owens is a guy that matured early, kept putting on weight. I don't know. I guess he didn't mature early because he was 260 when he was 17, and then he was 290 naturally by the time he was 21. But in terms of hairline, he looked like he was 40 years old by the time he graduated, and he was an engaging kid, an entertaining kid, had a good career. But my point is, I looked at him as a running back as a junior in New Jersey, and I was like, that guy's uncommon. But then he kept adding weight. So that was just another one of those running back evaluations that I got wrong. All right, question from Flint, Michigan. A guy by the name of Michigan State University. He's a real good source. And those of you that go to the bunker a lot, you know who he is, and I'm sure that you value his posts over the Underground Bunker. He says, what are your thoughts on Jaden Mangum's potential and Michigan State's chances of landing him? Is he a potential 4-star prospect, more of a wide receiver? What are his strengths and weaknesses? Do you think Courtney Hawkins recruiting him will be a big plus for Michigan State? Yeah, I think Hawkins is going to do a good job with him. Already did a good job, made an impression on Jaden Mangum when he called him and offered the scholarship earlier this week. Jaden Mangum is going to be a borderline 4-star. Some people think he should for sure be a 4-star, but we'll have to wait and see. Wide receiver and defensive back. I think he's 6'1" right now. He's just going to keep growing. His brother is a big tailback at Colorado, gained about 500 yards this year as a freshman. Jaden Mangum attends Birmingham Groves. He'll be a junior next fall, and right after Michigan State offered, the next day Michigan offered. He's got about 18 offers. So he's going to be a highly recruited guy. Those of you that are SpartanMag.com subscribers have listened to the podcast that we had with his dad, Artie Mangum, a guy that really knows the recruiting racket. And, he's pretty proud of his son getting a chance to get these scholarship offers, and more will be coming. Is he more of a wide receiver or corner? I'm not sure yet. Strengths and weaknesses. He's got to learn, like a lot of young receivers, he's got to learn to catch the ball out, the hand selection, out away from his body. He's doing a lot of body catching, which, Benny Fowler did that. Benny Fowler was a body catcher in high school, although he was more of a single wing tailback. So Benny Fowler had great talent. Everybody knows that. But was not really refined as a receiver, was in a single wing run-oriented offense at Country Day, came to Michigan State as an athlete, and he became an NFL receiver. But Benny Fowler remained a body catcher for the first couple of years as a Michigan State player, later got on the field and became more proficient with the hand selection. It's a simple thing, but that's something Jaden's going to work on. And if you watch his film, you can see that. But a lot of schools are already really excited about him. Good student, good kid, good potential. And Michigan State's chances of landing him, I would think right now, I would make Michigan State the favorite. Michigan State has a lot of work to do. They have to show a lot of love to this guy. And I think they're in position to do that and carry that out. Interestingly, like we wrote about a couple days ago and talked about in the podcast, his dad, Artie Mangum, his son, Jaron Mangum, that's Jaden Mangum's brother, played at Colorado, played 1 year under Mel Tucker. So Artie Mangum has had one son play for Mel Tucker, and everything that happened at Colorado, Mr. Mangum not holding it against Mel Tucker. We went over that in the podcast. He understands it was a business decision. Artie said that, Artie Mangum, the father, said that the women in his household, his wife and his grandmother, they'll need a little bit more convincing. So when the time comes for campus visits, I'm sure Mel Tucker will have his chance to explain that one to them. And how about Mel Tucker? I mean, what he's doing on social media, I'll say it again. A lot of people thought the day of the introductory press conference, people thought that he was struggling a little bit at the podium. And I've said it here before. I was in the second row, real close to him. And what it was is he was emotional. He was keeping his emotions in check. Now you're seeing him online, social media. I think the guy's telegenic. I mean, he gets his point across with a big smile. His heart comes through. Gosh, he's doing all the right things right now. And part of being a college football coach is being, a community leader and a politician of sorts. And when you say politician, some people think, maybe it's insincere, but with him, there's sincerity there. It comes across, and he has a presence too. So he's got a chance. He's got this way of showing his heart, and he's approachable, but he's also a tail kicker in terms of motivation and accountability. I mean, he's checking a lot of boxes, and I'm really eager to see how it all pans out in terms of when he puts his roster together and how he gets that Army mobilized. It's going to be fun to watch. I mean, he's going to be an easy guy for Michigan State fans to root for. You guys can see that already. Let's see what we got here. Let's see if we got any questions over here in the chat area. More dead air. I think I lead the Big Ten in dead air this season. Certainly apologize about that. But you know what? That's the way it is. All right, we got a lot of thumbs ups on the sound. Glad that's working again. Brian V wanted to talk recruiting. We did a little bit of that. Thumbs up to Corey Robinson for sure. Tom Coyle lost my job, but at least I have Friday night comp. Well, Tom, hopefully that's a temporary thing. I know there's a lot of that going on out there. And hang in there, man. Pull up a beverage. Hopefully you got a nice little stockpile. Drinking a Tom Coyle out there. I think I know Coyle a little bit. I think we've exchanged emails in the past. I think you're in Oakland County. Hang in there. Rooting for you. You'll be back at him soon. So Rocket was on Instagram talking about declaring. Interesting. Would not shock me to test the waters if other people are testing the waters. And that's part of, and Izzo's going to want him to stay in college because Izzo's going to think that it'd be better for him development-wise. And I think that's one of the reasons why when Izzo's doing some of these talk shows and articles, he's telling media people, look at the numbers, the number of people that declared for the draft last year, and how many are probably going to declare this year, and how many are going to get left out. So that's an indirect way to try to reach out to Rocket and probably some of his people to be mindful of those dynamics. So we'll have to keep an eye on that one. My conversation with Izzo was brief today because he was in the middle of something, so I didn't get a chance to go over all those things. But that part of it had not yet come up. But Izzo talked earlier in some other talk shows. I think he was on the Tim Stout show talking about how, he's afraid of the transfer portal. He's afraid of people going pro because that's what college coaches have to be nowadays. So I'm sure he's been re-recruiting his own roster to make sure, hey, Gabe Brown, this is what we see you doing. You're okay, right, man? Hey, Bingham, next year, you're hitting the weights. This is our vision of what you're going to be. You're okay, right, man? Just so you don't get Lorbecked like what happened in 2003. Question for the mailbag. Polo from Rockford, Michigan says, what are your thoughts on the in-state 2021 football recruits that Michigan State has the best shot at? I think the Tyson Watson kid, ranked number 12 in the state from Warren Mott right now, he's going to be deciding, I think, April 17th. Big guy, about 6'6", 270, I think he is. Let's see. Is he the... And Michigan State offered him, I think, was it Was it back in March? Anyway, I think Michigan State's got a good shot with him. Some of the other schools involved, what I think is Iowa State and maybe Maryland or something, but Michigan State deciding they want this big frame defensive lineman. Plays low, has some hands, has some good lower half to him, legs strong, uses his hands well to disengage. From what I've seen, I've not seen him yet be a guy that can really turn the corner. You always look for all the check boxes, and that's an important check box to turn that corner with that hip flexibility. And that's something that I said to Michael Fletcher. I didn't see him have that when he was in high school. So we will continue to keep an eye on Michael Fletcher while he's at Michigan State to see if he develops that. And if he does develop that and becomes a plus in that area, then that adds to our frame of reference in terms of looking at high school film and what they become later. Corey Robinson compared him a little bit to Joel Heath, and I would agree with that. I would agree with him as looking like the Joel Heath that Heath became as a redshirt junior and senior. Joel Heath became 6'6", 290 as a senior. This guy, Watson, is about 6'6", 275, headed toward there once he builds up his upper body a little bit. But Joel Heath was thin when he was in high school. I saw him at Michigan State's camp when he came in, the T-shirt camp, Michigan State's elite camp, and he was thin. And Michigan State offered him, and I was like, really? Okay. They know more about it than I do, right? So they tried Heath at defensive end. He didn't quite have that bend either. Grew into his body, became an excellent defensive tackle for some excellent Michigan State teams. He was a project type of guy. So I think that Watson is ahead of that. I think he's ahead of where Joel Heath was at the same age. Now, Joel Heath did a great job with his body, turned into a good player. But I agree with that comparison, even though as 17-year-olds, he's not like Heath. Heath was much slimmer. So I think Watson, Michigan State, a good chance with him. Josh Hemholt, a good story about Andrell Anthony, the wide receiver from East Lansing High School. Andrell Anthony, Michigan State's been on him for a long time. Harbaugh's been in on him. Harbaugh and D'Antonio each watched him play basketball this winter. Hometown guy. I think he's been impressed with the shot of enthusiasm that Mel Tucker has brought to the program. Andrell Anthony mentioned in the Josh Hemholt article how impressed he was with Tucker when he went over to Michigan State's campus and met him for the first time. Among other things, Mel Tucker told him, "I'm not letting you get out of East Lansing." So everybody knows I've got a lot of respect for Mark D'Antonio as a football coach and as a human being, first and foremost. He did a great job with the program. I think everybody would agree with that. I do think that Michigan State's got a better chance to get Andrell Anthony now with Mel Tucker than they would have with D'Antonio and the old staff and the old situation. Old situation was not terrible. We've had a lot of arguments and discussions about that. But the new situation, there's a lot of energy, a lot of enthusiasm, and the unknown is it's undefeated. So as long as the unknown's undefeated, you can market that a little bit. Be better if you had a chance to get them on campus now for spring football and the green-white game and the T-shirt camps in the summer. Can't do it, but in the meantime, the unknown is still undefeated. And right now, the recruiting climate is a climate of FaceTime and texts and social media and virtual visits. And right now, Michigan State is plugged in and energized and organized and doing a great job in those avenues. If it were the old staff, I suspect they might be spinning their wheels on some of those things right now and playing from behind with a lot of guys. But in the meantime, they'd be hitting their networks in Ohio, and that would serve them well also. As a matter of fact, that kind of saved them in a couple of recruiting classes. So those are some in-state guys that Michigan State's got a good shot at. There's others. Like Ethan Boyd's not in the top 25. I think he could end up being a top 25 guy. I don't care where he's ranked right now. I like that guy. He's already committed to Michigan State. Another guy with tree trunk thighs that moves well at 6'7", offensive tackle, strong guy. The defensive tackle, also from Detroit that we talked about. I think Michigan State's got a real solid chance with him. But, he's taking it more slowly because I don't know if he's been on campus yet. What's the guy's name? I'm looking it up right now. The older I get, the more I forget these guys' names. Derek Harmon from Detroit Loyola. Yeah, 6'4", 325. I know his game. I don't know his name. I forgot his name, but I'll forget it a few more times over the next 18 months. 6'4", 325. Michigan State offered on March 27th. Has offers from Ole Miss and Purdue. Big, strong. For a big, strong guy at 6'4", 325, a defensive tackle, not slow of foot. Not slow. Not a jackrabbit, but he can. I've seen big guys in both sports when they're 16 or 17 move pretty well, and then when they turn 17, 18, 19, they move even better. Big guys can add some quickness, and he's not slow, but he's not. He moves okay. Would not shock me if he moves better than okay by next year. But as big as he is, he doesn't get by just on brute strength and size. Talking about Derek Harmon, Detroit Loyola. He's got the use of his hands, arm over move, and some wipe moves with the shoulder club wipe type of moves. He's been taught some good hand battle, some hand technique in there. I like that kid Harmon. I don't know where he's ranked right now, and he's taking it very slow. He's like, I'm looking forward to building the relationship and visiting. He's not in a hurry to do anything. So that's a guy that I don't know where he's ranked, and Boyd I don't think is ranked, but I think he will be. So there's going to be other players, I think, in the state of Michigan that aren't ranked right now that I think are going to become involved in this recruiting chase, especially if the high school kids get on the field this fall. It'd be a shame in a lot of ways if we lose sports this fall, but in terms of recruiting, that next level of player that's being evaluated will lose the ability to be evaluated, and that's going to be really interesting to see how that shakes out. And I'll repeat this again. Some of you have heard me say this, and I said it last night in the Recruiting Rap podcast. Recruiting, and I said it on the Stout Show today also, recruiting right now in the month of April is the most competitive I think I have ever seen. Now, we all remember times in which Michigan State has gotten a recruit or two in April, and times in which Michigan has gotten recruits beating out Michigan State, and people on our message board freak out about it, rightly or wrongly. There's been some good recruiting battles and decisions in the spring in the past, and usually there's a lot of commitments that take place around the time of the spring game. Usually Michigan State comes out of the spring game and exits the spring heading toward May evaluations with about 5 commitments, usually, maybe 6. This year, Michigan State with a late start because D'Antonio retired, and Mel Tucker only had, about 2 weeks to get players on campus to visit during the visit window. And then they were planning to get more visits for the spring, but it didn't happen for obvious reasons. So, why it's more competitive this year is because there's a thin pool, a more finite pool of talent that everybody is choosing from, with the future unknown. So right now, everybody is evaluating film, because nobody is practicing. So you don't have to plan practices. You don't have to go out and practice. You don't have to come back and watch film of your own practice and do all that spring football stuff. You're spending all your time, if you're a coach, on recruiting. So it gives you more time to watch film. And you better watch a ton of film right now, because you want to categorize, all right, which guys are ready to be offered right now. And that pool is critical, because usually when you're dividing things up as a coach, you've got these guys are offers right now, and these guys are top of the list, and these guys are guys we would offer, and these guys are guys we would take if they committed right now. And maybe these guys that we've offered aren't committable offers most years, but maybe they are right now. And then you've got these guys that you look at and you're like, oh, we're never going to offer those guys, and you throw those out. And then you've got these other categorized guys that you're like, these guys have a chance, but we're not ready to offer them right now. But those are the guys that you usually want to bring back to your camp in the summer once or twice. And those are guys you also want to go and watch them in the fall and get a look at their first samples of senior film in the fall, right? You want to take another look at those guys someday. Trey Waynes was in that category, came in, got an offer. There's been a bunch of them. All right, so now that group might be out the window, because there's not going to be any t-shirt camps this summer, and who knows, there might not be high school football in the fall. So those guys that are in that category, you may never get another chance to evaluate them. Those guys that you're not sure about, all that you may ever have on them is your junior film that you're not sure on. So if you're not going to be as sure about these guys, if that part of recruiting is not going to be available to you this year, then what does that do? That makes these guys more important. The ones that you've decided you're going to offer, whether they're in Louisiana or Southfield, they become ultra, ultra important right now. And that's why you're seeing football recruiting right now in the spring at a rapid boil. And you saw how aggressive Penn State was coming into the state of Michigan, getting 3 commitments this week. They were leading for those guys and doing a good job with them. But, I mean, they hit the gas pedal hard right now because they knew Mel Tucker was making a move on some of those guys. So Michigan State's going to keep recruiting those guys in Detroit. But recruiting right now, April recruiting, is the most competitive I have ever seen. So, I mean, people say there's not a lot of sports going on, and that's true. You know, getting ready for the NFL draft, which will be interesting this year in a lot of ways. Looking forward to seeing what happens with Joe Bocci and Kenny Willekes, Josiah Scott. That's going to hold our interest as far as sports goes. You know, UFC is trying to do something, but that keeps blowing a flat tire. Some of you gearheads have been watching some of the iRacing, which I'm getting a kick out of that a little bit, as a matter of fact. I've been having fun watching some of the old baseball games on the MLB network. Today, the Game 6 of the 1975 World Series, a game that I missed. I remember watching that in 2nd grade with my dad, watching Louis Tiant pitch, and I had to go to bed. Next day, get up, my mom and dad tell me that Boston won, there's going to be Game 7. I was a Cincinnati Reds fan back then. I never saw the game. I recorded it. I watched a little bit of it today. I'm going to go back and watch it. I've never had a chance to watch that game. So, man, the broadcasting was great back then. Joe Garagiola and those guys. And then yesterday, Dodgers, Yankees, Ron Guidry against Steve Garvey, Keith Jackson, Howard Cosell. That stuff's great. I don't sit glued to it. I have it on, and it's in the background while I'm working on stuff. So that's sports for now, right? And people say there are no sports. UFC, maybe. iRacing on NASCAR, maybe. Draft, for sure. Well, if you're a college football fan, there are sports right now, and it's recruiting. And that's no different than any other year. As a matter of fact, it's amplified. Not going to have your spring games. We will miss those, but recruiting is amplified right now. Question number 5, Macklin JB from Rochester. He says, when a new staff comes in, there tends to be some natural attrition as players are evaluated and given feedback. Do you expect less attrition than usual this year since the team has not been able to practice? Less attrition. If so, I would say that will slow the speed of change in terms of culture and confidence, he says. The staff, that would slow the change that the staff would like to see. Do you agree? Non-committal on that. He says, he says, I think, he says, do I expect, the main point of the question is, do I expect less attrition? Because there's always attrition when there's a new coach, usually. Not always, but usually. Am I expecting less attrition because they've not been able to practice this spring? I'd say maybe, but remember, Mark D'Antonio, I think, only lost one player. He lost a kid from Florida that was kind of a loose cannon. But all those D'Antonio kids wanted to stay. I would have to look at the scholarship numbers to see how many seniors Michigan State has. I've not done that math. There's always players on every roster that are not getting on the field by year 3, and usually that's when a lot of programs want to move guys out. D'Antonio was never fond of doing that. He would keep guys. I suspect that Tucker and these guys would be more of the opposite approach, that by year 3 or 4, they might encourage somebody to look for another home. I don't know that for a fact, and none of the coaches have told me that. So if I'm wrong about that, I apologize. And if you're a coach watching this right now, email me and tell me I'm wrong. That's fine. I do think that when you're building a program like Mel Tucker and his staff are doing, you are going to want to have a full 25-man recruiting class whenever possible. Mel Tucker spent a year at Alabama and at Georgia, and I know they had great recruiting classes. Alabama was always able to sign 25 or more and get rid of people, famously cut people. Will Tucker do that? I'm not sure. A lot of fans would probably like to see that. My guess is they're going to want to recruit a 25-man class soon, this year. So I'm not sure if they've I've not looked to see what the numbers are to whether they would have 25 or not. Let's say they've got room for 22. Does that mean they would want to clear 3 out to get to 25? My guess is yes. So if that's my guess, does it make it harder for them to make those decisions because there's no spring practice? The answer to that is yes as well. So will it be harder to clear that room to get to 25? You might be onto something there. Macklin and Rochester it will be harder to do that. But if they want to do that, they'll probably get it done one way or another. I will say this. There's not a lot of fat at defensive line, linebacker, or in the defensive backfield. I mean, there's a couple defensive backs who have not played yet, but my point is it's not like at linebacker. I remember years when they've gone 8 deep with scholarship linebackers that could play. And right now they've got 3, maybe 4. Linebackers are thin. Defensive line is thin and being replenished. So it's not like there's a lot of guys on defense that are ready to get pushed out the door. I'm not sure they've got a lot of wiggle room on that side of the ball. Bill from Byron Center says, Jim, are you hearing or expecting to hear anything from Coach Jay Johnson, the offensive coordinator, as to the abilities of the Michigan State quarterbacks understanding the concepts, nuances, responsibilities, and play calls of the new offense? Am I hearing anything about that? Well, Konadike had a story about that a couple of weeks ago. Jay Johnson said that he likes the IQ on each of these quarterbacks thus far in terms of watching film and their ability to voice what they're looking at, concepts, and where to go with the ball based on defenses and reads and progressions and those type of things. He's not seen it on a film yet, but Jay Johnson at least tells us that he feels that the IQ is not a problem with those guys. You know, you got to do it on the field and you have other things you have to prove, but from the get-go, he's telling us that all 3 of those guys, not counting Noah Kim, who's not here yet, the incoming freshman, but he likes the football IQ on the 3 quarterbacks. Bill from Byron Center says, in addition, is there anybody that might be separating themselves relative to reading defenses? As far as I know, not that I know of, but it seemed like Jay Johnson had more to say about Peyton Thorne than the others. Just an observation I had while doing that teleconference. Which, all right. And, you know, he mentioned him being a coach of a son. But also Rocky Lombardi was the son of a coach also. Peyton Thorne, son of a coach. All right. Bill from Byron Center also says, is the new software helpful in this regard? The new software being, what's the name of that app? Win Now or something like that? That's you know, they pose questions to players and they quiz them and keep score of their quizzes based on the reads that they see, where they would go with the ball, or if you're a defensive player, if you're a defensive back and there's a receiver motions and it becomes trips to one side, and what your responsibility becomes as the formation changes on the other side of the field. I mentioned that in the article. I think was it the Kapilovich article? One of those articles earlier this week, we talked about that a little bit. So he's asking me if that new software can help in this regard. Certainly can't hurt. They believe in it, and it's a good way to rep some of these quarterbacks. And for the coaches, I'm sure that they rep them on that, and I'm sure they look at the grades. So, yeah, I'm sure it's a tool. It's not the end-all, be-all tool, but it's a tool. It gives them also the coaches a chance to talk to the quarterbacks and correct somebody if they're getting things wrong, obviously. So some of those things can get corrected before they get on the field sometimes. All right, and that's it. He has another question here, but we'll just move on. He says, all right, let's move on to Chris from Henderson, Nevada. He says, even though nobody has the answer at the moment, I'm still interested in your thoughts. If you think there will be any college football this year, what are the odds? That's Chris from Henderson, Nevada. Chris wants the odds in Nevada. Football this fall. College football this fall. I'm going to stick at 50-50. I heard Jim Brandstatter say that on a radio show last week. His guess is probably better than mine, and I'll go 50-50. By the way, yeah, that is the Mateen Cleaves, the 2000 National Championship issue of Spartan Magazine. I'll be going back to Lynn Shadnoy back here with a leather helmet real soon, but we're just doing that now because it's the 20th anniversary, right, people? All right, so I'm going to say 50-50, and you guys know all the reasons why. Seth from West Bloomfield, when are those Spartan Mag t-shirts going to be available to purchase? I need it for my shelter swag. It'd be a good look, Seth, and I've got to look into that. I got to get that. I got to get that together. It's something I want to do. And he says, I wanted to inquire. By the way, I don't have a Spartan Mag t-shirt on tonight. I've got the Rivals one on. Spartan Mag, maybe I'll sport that Sunday if we do this on Sunday. But yeah, I'd like to see you guys in a Spartan Mag t-shirt. We'd like to get that out there. We'll have to see. And he says, I wanted to inquire about where the staff stands with Dylan Tatum. That's the running back from West Bloomfield. Michigan State has the commitment from the kid from Oak Park. Michigan State wants 2 running backs in this class. Tatum, can he play on defense? I think that's something that they're still looking at. Actually, well, Tatum is 2022, isn't he? Yeah, he's a 2022. So that would not pertain to this class. But he came in. They liked him. He's visited. He was here for the basketball game, right? The Michigan basketball game. So that one's early. I'm not sure. I know some people are predicting Michigan on that one, but they're predicting Michigan with Donovan Edwards as well. So I've got no early read on that one. I mean, that kid's a sophomore right now. I had more of a read on Mangum for other reasons, but not so much on Tatum for right now. But I've got some contacts in West Bloomfield. I'll put my ear to the ground on that a little bit there. And also, Corey has a good ear to the ground on those things. Also, let's look here at the chat questions. Rob South mentioned Rocket Watts. Paul Jacobson, story in the Lansing State Journal reminded me of how weak our kick punt return teams have been. Last punt return and kickoff for a touchdown seems like a long time ago. Why has State been so poor at this in recent years? Now, for the punt return, Michigan State's never set up for punt returns. Michigan State does a lot of punt safe, and they'll set up for returns on the gunners a little bit, but they won't retreat. Under Mark D'Antonio, they did not retreat the people in the box, the box 6 or however many are in the box 7 or whatever. They don't pull and retreat those guys to set up for a return because that makes you more susceptible to give up a fake punt. Ask yourself, how often did you see a team fake a punt against Michigan State in the Mark D'Antonio era? The answer is 0. I don't think anyone ever tried. So I remember there was a time, was it Kirk Ferentz? Kirk Ferentz often, his teams would set up to for the punt return, and they would turn, so I'm on the punt team, and I'm not rushing to block it. I'm going to set the return. So I turn my back to go back there to set up the return. Iowa would do that, and there were like 2 or 3 times, especially against Wisconsin. There was one famous game when Wisconsin faked a punt from their own 20-yard line, and the punter ran for like 70 yards because Iowa's players were getting back to set up for a return and were not aware that a punt fake was taking place. That is why Michigan State has not returned punts all that successfully. Keyshawn Martin got loose a couple of times. There have been some guys back there with less than great burst and athleticism returning punts. They thought there were guys that did a good job fielding it. The number one priority in trestle ball is to get the ball back when the team is 4th down and in punting. That means don't rough the punter like you did in the Big Ten championship game that probably cost you a Rose Bowl in 2011. And that wasn't even, a punt block was not even on for that play. Who was it? Isaiah Lewis just got in kind of deep, thought he had a chance and kind of took an angle, and there was an acting job, and you rough the punter and you're out of the Rose Bowl. They weren't even trying to block the punt. Ended up having a good return anyway because it's Keyshawn Martin. But basically, their theory, their philosophy was don't rough the punter, don't jump offside, field the ball, make sure they don't fake it, get the ball back. That was the priority. So coverage about Michigan State, I'm talking about media coverage as if That's been a big problem for Michigan State. Michigan State did not see that as a problem because they did not emphasize the punt return. Kickoff return, how many kickoff returns were there in the Big Ten this year? Look that number up. I'm not sure. So, so when you say how weak the return teams have been, it's been under D'Antonio, it was a philosophical situation, and I don't disagree with it. Because I mean, they won some games, didn't they? Would have been nice to have that interjected. It would be nice to have a Keyshawn Martin on your roster every year. Seems like Wisconsin might have gotten loose for a kick return against Michigan State once or twice. I can't remember. Anyway, so you ask why have they been so poor? That's the reason. Paul Jacobson, thanks for the question. Also, Jacobson says Benny Fowler dropped a lot of passes when he was a body catcher. Get the hands out and things change. You're right about that, Paul. 313 Hitman. That's Thomas Hearns. Always good to see Thomas back with us. Says, what's up? Go white, go green, faithful. It's not actually Thomas Hearns. I just say that. Shaw Locke says, hey, Jim, thanks for keeping these going. 313 Hitman says, not worried about Tucker now. He got a solid staff to me thus far. I would agree with that, too. Doors Fan 91 says, who's your top quarterback prospect that Michigan State has a shot at? You know, that Costelli kid after that virtual visit today, there's him and there's Hamp Fay. I mean, if Hampton Fay wanted to commit right now out of Texas and you've got Costelli there that wants to visit, do you take a commitment from Hampton Fay? I'm not sure. I think they're gonna. I think they got a shot at a few, and they've got time. On one hand, but it's a scramble on the other hand. Like I mentioned, Costelli, could he come out from? Could a top 200 from California? Could they really finish that deal? It's a great question. I don't know the answer to those. I'm glad that that's not my job to decide. Like if Hampton Fay wanted to commit right now, do you take him and get out of these other races? I don't know. But they've got a shot. So you're asking, who do they have the best shot at? I got to say Hampton Fay would probably be the best one. But other ones are going to crop up. You know, Caden Salter's in there, 6'1", 185, out of Texas. You know, he dropped his top 11 on April 4th. Michigan State's in there. Auburn is in there also. Tennessee, Baylor, Kansas, Arkansas, Georgia Tech, Louisville, Utah, Ole Miss, UCLA. Salter's planning to visit. I would imagine Salter might get a virtual visit here real soon. Hampton Fay's already been on campus. It's a great question, my man, and I don't have the answer, Doors fan. You know, you're right. He says... Doors fan says, I thought Harmon was announcing next week. Yes, he did tweet that out. And that's interesting because his initial tweet and his initial comments were that he was looking forward to establishing a relationship. And it seemed like he was really going slow with it. He's since had some contact with Michigan State, whether or not that put it over the edge, whether he's now feeling more comfortable with Michigan State. Maybe that's why. We'll look into that more deeply to see what's going on with him. That's the defensive lineman from Loyola. Thanks for reminding me about that. That was a game changer when he announced he's going to be deciding early. But that also gets back to that rapid boil that I'm talking about with recruiting right now. And there's more of a spring push for recruiting commitments now than I've ever seen. And Michigan State deciding they like Harmon, going after him. Maybe they've turned up the wick on that, and maybe that's the reason he's decided. We will have our ear to the ground to see if those two things add up, if that's the reason why. All right, we're going to go back to the mailbag, and we'll come back to the chat area and wrap this up. We're at 1 hour right now. I'm getting over the time limit, but we're on pace. Rob South says, looks like we got one more question here in the mailbag. Rob South says, I've noticed we're possibly taking 2 running backs for the 2021 class. If not Donovan Edwards out of West Bloomfield, then who might be the other? I talked to Corey Robinson about this a little bit for information on some of the other running backs that are high on Michigan State's activity board. And we've detected that there's 3 that stand out. A lot of you know about Jalen Anderson, the running back from Perry, Ohio, 6 feet 210, good size at 210. Junior film, ranked number 199 in the country, number 9 player in the state of Ohio. Offers, you got Michigan State in there, Kentucky's in there, Iowa is in there. It looks like Ohio State's done at running back, right? So that leaves the door open for this guy, and he's got some size, and he's got hands. Let me look something up real quick. He's not as big as L.J. Scott was, but he's 210. L.J. Scott was 215 when he was a high school senior. Jalen Anderson, 210 as a high school junior. Jalen Anderson an inch shorter. Anderson reminds me a little bit of L.J. Scott in some ways. And speaking of which, had a chance to rewatch the 2015 Michigan State-Iowa game, Big Ten championship game, that final drive, and just focused in on L.J. Scott. Everybody knows that he was a hero in that drive. But there were some times when he had a 2-yard gain in that carry, and the 2 yards were miraculous. Maybe not miraculous, but they were heroic. Iowa had a very good defense that year, tough, smart, and every inch was earned on that 20-play drive or whatever it was. L.J. Scott as a freshman, just outstanding. That game, that drive, ended up becoming a good player at Michigan State. Never became a 1,000-yard rusher. Never met his potential, frankly. But Jalen Anderson reminds me a little bit of L.J. Scott. You don't remember that L.J. Scott once upon a time could run pretty well. If you remember the really bad season in 2016 when Michigan State nearly upset Ohio State despite going 3-9, and Ohio State was in contention for the national championship, L.J. Scott early in that game playing against his home state Buckeyes a couple times got up the sideline and showed some speed, serious speed. So when I say L.J. Scott, some of you might be thinking about the struggling end of career L.J. Scott. But as a high school guy, Jalen Anderson reminds me of that a little bit, and maybe even a little bit more of a sidestep move. Jalen Anderson, the other thing about Jalen Anderson, when you watch his film, a lot of his film, he's out at like slot receiver or what they used to call a wing back. He's catching passes. I'll have to watch more film. I'm not here to say that he can go out and catch balls like Marshall Faulk. I'm not saying he's got great hands like Le'Veon Bell. Maybe not a guy that's going to go deep or make circus catches. Maybe he can. I'm not sure. I don't know what his hands are, but it's interesting that Perry High School utilizes him with the throw game a lot. So he's multidimensional. He's got some size. He's got some smoothness and acceleration. Got that little sidestep. I like Jalen Anderson a lot. Michigan State's been in there. Battle with Kentucky, Iowa. That could end up being a really great recruiting battle. Michigan State and Kentucky. You all know that Kentucky's been doing a really good job recruiting in the state of Ohio. Now Mel Tucker is going to go in there and go against his buddy that he tried to hire over here at Michigan State that turned him down. And that might be the first initial round number 1, Tucker versus Stoops in Ohio. It's a great recruiting battleground. Michigan State and Kentucky meeting halfway in the state of Ohio for recruits. It's going to be happening a lot. Jalen Anderson is going to be an interesting one. Michigan State just might want to make a statement with that one, and Kentucky just might want to make a statement and say, we've been running Ohio the last few years, with the exception of the Buckeyes, and it's going to stay that way. Jalen Anderson going to be an interesting recruiting battle. Other running backs, there's Audric Estime. I'm not sure how to pronounce that last name. It's either Estime or Estime. New Jersey kid, running back, 5'11", 210 pounds. He's ranked number 197 in the nation, number 10 running back in the country, number 6 in New Jersey. He's ranked a little bit ahead of Anderson. Out of the small amount of film that I've watched, I would flip those rankings a little bit. Just me for entertainment purposes. I like Estime, but I like Anderson a little bit better. But, I get these things wrong all the time. Estime, Rutgers has been recruiting well in the state of New Jersey with Shiano there now back. That's priority 1. That is the job to do if you're the head coach at Rutgers, is to recruit New Jersey. Something that they've struggled with over the years. Shiano did a pretty good job of it back in the old days when they were in the Big East. Now they're in the Big Ten, and he's off to a good start recruiting in-state guys. Estime, is a guy that high priority for Rutgers, New Jersey kid. You got Maryland in on him, Duke, Minnesota, Nebraska, Pittsburgh, Virginia Tech, West Virginia hot after this guy too, but he's high on Michigan State's board. Another one, Logan Diggs out of Louisiana, 3-star kid, 6 feet, 191. All of these guys are 190 or bigger. So you've got Davion Prim. They've got room for one other running back, and they want like a 4-star type of talent with some size. That's what these guys have in common. I realize that Diggs is a 3-star, but sometimes there's so much talent down in Louisiana. A 3-star running back down there, if he were playing at Livonia Churchill, he'd be a 4-star probably because he might stand out a little bit more. But Diggs is ranked number 14 player in Louisiana. If you're number 14 in Louisiana, I think maybe by next fall, there's a chance that a top 14 in Louisiana could end up being a 4-star. Anyway, he's a 3-star right now. Offers from Arizona State, Ole Miss, Nebraska, Oklahoma State, USC, Virginia. The big SEC schools I don't think are in yet, but they probably will be. Michigan State with some ties in Louisiana now with the graduate assistant, making some, doing a lot of networking down there, and they're going to be in on some Louisiana guys, and they're going to sign a couple Louisiana guys at least. So those are some of the running backs Michigan State's looking at, and those are probably longer-term recruitments. Maybe, I don't know, Anderson, I don't know if he said that he wants to make a decision early or not, but Michigan State, when they take the second running back, it's going to have to be their type of guy. Unless they don't get their type of guy and take it all the way to February, then they might be able to circle back with something else. But they've got pretty high ambitions and high standards for the second running back for this class. 313 Hitman says, do Rocky Lombardi have a chance as the starter? We talked about this last week, and I think if D'Antonio were still head coach, I would have made Lombardi the favorite to be the starter for the Northwestern game. I mentioned last week that there might have been a difference of opinion on that, and Brad Salem might have favored Peyton Thorne, but that's no longer part of the calculus. So does Lombardi have a chance? Yeah, he's going to have a chance. Sure, he's got a chance. Yes, the answer is yes. So we're going to go over these remaining questions on the chat area and wrap it up inside of 70 minutes. Let's see if we can do that. Gurman Minhas says Harmon's top 4 is dropping tomorrow, and he's committing on Tuesday. Thank you. And Doors fan included me in on that a little bit. I would imagine Michigan State's going to be one of the 4. Who else has been in there? Like Iowa State and Minnesota? Let me see here. Ole Miss, Purdue. I don't know, but the love that Michigan State showed him, I think, was pretty serious, and that might have tilted him into making a decision quickly because of that boil thing I'm talking about, the rapid boil going on. I look forward to seeing what happens there, and if Michigan State winds up with him, he'll be an interesting big lineman to evaluate over the years. A defensive lineman, it's a finite resource. The football gods do not make a lot of good, big defensive linemen. There been a few in the state of Michigan, but not a ton of them. Last year I loved that guy, Rook, what's his name? The guy that went to Clemson. And we talked about him at the camps. I just loved his film when he was a 2-star. I'm like, this dude is not a 2-star. And next thing you know, Clemson offered him. But it's not like there's 30 of those guys every year. And when you get a 300-pound, 6'4" defensive tackle like Harmon that moves pretty well, and you're only 2 commitments into your class, go ahead and get that guy. I mentioned on the recruiting wrap last night that I actually like his film a little bit better than I did Jonathan Hankins when Hankins was a junior. Hankins was a teammate of Will Golston's, and I didn't dislike him, but Michigan State did not end up offering him. Then Ohio State did. They got him, ended up being an NFL player. Mistake for Michigan State. I think they thought he was too big. Remember, Michigan State had Antonio Jeremiah that was too big and so big, and they just couldn't get him on the field, and he never played. And that was right when the up-tempo thing was just starting. And that's when Rich Rodriguez had just come into vogue, and he was going to be doing tempo. So there's an unknown frontier a little bit there on defense. Like can you still play a 320-pound nose and just leave him on the field? You get stuck on the field back then when the tempo thing was just starting, you could have a problem. Well, Ohio State took him and he was fine. I don't think the weight was ever a problem. But I think that was the thinking. Anyway, Hankins was good, but I think I like Harmon's junior film better. I'm not saying he's going to be better than Hankins. I'm just trying to compliment where I think Harmon is. Use of hands, strong, well coached. Interesting one. All right, Evans Channel says, yeah, laughing out loud, no hate, but we need Corey to speak about recruits. Yeah, if Corey's got it. He's been working enough. And that is a great dimension when Corey's in here able to answer questions about recruits while we do this. Seth Foreman says, thank you for what you're doing. I think you still need a Jamie like on the Joe Rogan show. Yeah, that would be good. We're going to try to add some dimensions here to bring so that it's just not me talking, because I think people get tired of that, right? But we're working on that. As far as Jamie goes, if we had a Jamie, we need a few more subscribers. You got to pay these people, right? I do like the Rogan podcast. Interesting. All right. Shaw Locke says 50-50, same odds. Yep, 50-50. Old Tuck is tardy, and he's not just tardy. He's it's an unexcused absence for Old Tuck, so that's disappointing. Doors fan says, do we know what happened with LJ in the pros? Just burned out on football or something else? I think that's a good way to put it. Just kind of burned out on football, kind of flaked out a little bit. Didn't have that burning desire in practice. Yeah, just kind of had enough. It's kind of what happened there. And he didn't last long with his NFL tryout and struggled late in his career at Michigan State. Wish him the best. All right, that's going to wrap it up. 71 minutes. That's probably enough. That's probably too long. Appreciate everybody checking in, being a part of SpartanMag.com Live, SpartanMag Live. Keep an eye on the Underground Bunker message board and Twitter. God willing, we might be back here on Sunday. Do it again. Try to do more of these. I got the 9 questions today, the mailbag. There's a lot more on the message board. I'll sift through some of those and look to possibly be back on Sunday. Thanks for checking in. Thanks for being a part of it. We'll see you over on the Underground Bunker message board. In the meantime, if you're not a subscriber to SpartanMag.com, go check it out. We'd love for you to become a member right now. Thanks. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you next time.